like that. Mm-hmm. Yep. You know, something that every one of us in the room this morning, we have in common, whether you're a regular church attender, maybe this is your first time, whether you're a Christian, you're not a Christian, doesn't matter. Something that every one of us have in common this morning is that we worry about stuff, don't we? We worry about stuff, whether it's getting germs on a handle or stuff a lot bigger than that. But we all share worries. And there's different kind or different levels of worry. Or some of you are just, you worry about everything, don't you? I mean, you worry. You carry the weight of the world on you. That's your spiritual gift. It's the gift of worry. I mean, you worry for other people that don't even concern you. You're just a big-time worrier. And then the other extreme of that is some of you don't worry about anything. I mean, you just like, okay. And people worry that you don't worry about stuff. You know what I'm talking about? And then there's those of us that are kind of in between, that we're normally not worriers, but considering things that are happening in our world and in our culture today, that even those of us who say we don't worry, we're kind of getting worried about some things. So it's something that all of us have in common is worry. But here's the thing, worry is essentially this. It's a preoccupation with tomorrow. It's about worrying about something that has not yet happened. Well, somehow we're trying to control tomorrow. Somehow we're trying to have a certainty about tomorrow. I love what one secular writer wrote. He said this, that worrying is like prayer in reverse. You think about that? Worry is like prayer in reverse. Prayer generally makes issues smaller, and worry tends to make issues much bigger than they are. But you see, when we worry, we do this. When we worry, we focus all of our attention. We shut out all the other arenas and all the other areas of our life, and we focus our attention on that one area, that one thing. We get so focused, and our attention is focused on one particular area of our life. Am I going to get into that school that I want to get into? Or am I going to pass this exam? Or am I going to be able to keep my job? Or what about my marriage? Or I'm so concerned about my kids. And we start focusing on one particular area of our lives. That's what worry does. You see, we get hyper-focused on one thing, and that thing gets bigger and bigger, and we're just totally distracted by something that we actually have no control over. Something that we can't control that may happen tomorrow, next week, or next year. So Jesus addresses this issue of worry. And he doesn't just help us cope with worry. And I want you to get this morning. We're not talking about how to cope with worry, because a lot of secular authors, they write books on how to cope with worry. But what set Jesus apart from all the other writers was Jesus said, I'm going to tell you the solution to worry. I'm going to tell you how not to worry. And if you were here last week, we talked about 3 statements from the scriptures that we read. 3 amazing statements that Jesus made about worry. And the first statement he made was simply this: you cannot add anything to your life by worrying. You can't add anything to your life by worrying. Now, how many this morning would actually say, I know you can't add anything to your life by worrying, but I may have taken a little life off of my expectancy by worrying? Anybody like that? You sitting next to anybody like that? Yeah, we worry, don't we? He said, you can't add anything to your life by worry. The next thing he said was, do all you can do in the now and trust God with what's beyond the now. Do everything that you can do and then trust God to do what only He can do. Trust Him to do what we cannot accomplish on our own. And then the third statement he made was this: the things that you are most devoted to are the things you worry about the most. The thing you're most devoted to, that's the thing that you're worried about the most. If you want to know what you're most devoted to in your life, then track your worries, because that'll lead you directly to where your devotion really lies. Because your worries lead us to the point of our greatest devotion. So we'll begin this week recapping 3 verses that we read last week, and then we're getting into what Jesus had to say about worry. And the first thing that we talked about last week, this verse, he said, can any one of you by worrying add a single hour to your life? Can you by worry add a single hour to your life? And then he goes on and he said, and why do you worry about your clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow? They don't labor or they do not labor or spin. We do that, don't we? We know how to labor and spin, don't we? We know how to worry and fret, how to work and get out there and get busy and try to make stuff happen. We know how to labor and spin. He said, but the flowers don't do that. And he says, I tell you what, that not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. Last week, if you were here, we talked about Jesus gave an illustration. He said, take a lesson from nature. And Jesus made this statement. He said, look at the birds. Look at the birds of the air. And when we made that statement last week, our response is, hey, we don't have time to look at the birds, okay? We don't have time to stop and observe the flowers or smell the flowers. I mean, we got a mortgage to pay. We got a 401k to work. We have health issues. We have issues in our marriage. We're worried about our kids, and we're worried about our finances, and we go on and on and on. And we say, stop and look at the birds? Are you kidding me? I doubt it. He's asking us to just pause a minute. And he says, back up a little and consider what I've done and what I'm doing. Consider all this. Consider what you found out when you were growing up, maybe in Sunday school or in early years of your life, what you were taught, what the church taught you, or what your parents taught you. He said, I created everything. Do you believe that? I created everything. I mean, in the beginning, God created and all that stuff. He said, do you believe that? Do you believe that I'm the creator? Do you believe that I am the sustainer of the earth? Do you believe the stories that you've heard from the scriptures and that you were taught maybe as a child? Do you believe these stories? Do you believe that they actually happened? Do you believe that I actually did what I said that I did? He says, okay then, don't lose sight of those things that you believed maybe as a child or when you were in church. Don't lose sight of those things, because that's a part of helping you overcome your worries. And then I love this next verse, verse 30. He says this, if this is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow it is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you? He's saying, do you believe I'm in control? Do you believe that God is in control, that God started this whole thing, that God is sustaining this whole thing, that God keeps the planets in the orbit, and that He created everything? And we go, yeah, I believe that. And He says, okay, that's great. You've come this far with your faith, but don't stop there. Don't stop short. He said, take it all the way and believe me. Take the next step in your faith. And this is where we ended last week when Jesus made this statement. And He said, you of little faith. You of little what? Faith. You of little faith. I think when Jesus made this statement, He wasn't like, oh man, you faith, you don't have any faith. I think it was more like this. Come on, guys. Where's your faith? Come on, guys. You believe all this, don't you? Come on, guys. Where is your faith? This is why this is so important. I hope you get this morning. Is there is a relationship between the size of your faith and the size of your worries. There is a relationship between the size of your faith and the size of your worry. The reason you're so worried is because you have little faith. Jesus is saying, okay, let me get this straight. You believe God created everything. You believe He sustains everything. You believe He feeds and cares for the birds. You believe that He clothes the flowers of the fields and that they spring up and then they die and the seeds fall out and the bees come along and there's this pollination. You believe all of that I caused all that to happen. And we go, yeah, we believe God created everything. And He said, then why don't you believe that I'll clothe you? Why don't you believe I'll take care of you? Come on, guys. Where's your faith? It's going, look, I've already believed the harder part, the creation and all that stuff. He said, why don't you just take the next step? God, I've done all I know to do. I've labored, I've spent, I've filled out application, I've paid the bills, I've studied, I've worked hard, I showed up at the interview. I've done all that I can do, and now I'm trusting you, God, with what I can't do. I'm trusting you with tomorrow. Jesus says the reason you're so worried is your faith is small. People with huge faith, they don't worry very much. In fact, those kind of people bother you, don't they? They bother me. They just, I believe, and you just don't want to go slap them. And they kind of bother us at times because they don't worry. You can face the same circumstances and same situation that they face. And maybe theirs is a little worse. Maybe their situation is a little darker. Maybe their future is a little more uncertain. Periodically, we run into people whose circumstances are worse than ours. They've done all they know that they can do, and they don't seem to worry. They're not even afraid. We think, I don't even know how to handle this situation. I don't know what I'd be a nervous wreck. I mean, I would drink more. I would medicate more. My family would probably blow up. I mean, I couldn't even get out of bed in the morning if I was facing the same situation they're facing. And they're not fine, but they're not worried. And we go, what's up with that? Well, you just ran into a person who has big faith. Because the bigger our faith, the smaller our worries. And then Jesus goes on, and he says, do not worry, say, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? And what shall we wear? Now, those were legitimate concerns of the people in Jesus' culture and of that day. I mean, they were worried about what they're going to eat, what they were going to drink, and worried about what they were going to wear, if they were going to have clothes to wear. And the only thing that most of us worry about in connection with this today is you're sitting here thinking, okay, I'm worrying about if we're going to beat the Baptists out of church today so we can be the first in line at the buffet. I mean, that's about the extent of our worrying if we're going to have food. But this was real worries for this crowd. They were worried about that. And I think if Jesus were to be addressing us today in our culture, that maybe he would say something like, don't worry about finding a job in this economy. Don't worry about whether the house is going to sell in this market. Don't worry about your kids getting into that school and then worrying about how you're going to pay for that college education. Don't worry about getting the right person or finding the right person. Don't worry about if you're going to be able to retire. Don't worry about good health and feeling good again. He's saying don't spend your life stressed out over these things, not because they're not important. They're very important. He's saying after you've done all that you can do, don't sit around and worry about the things that you cannot control and worry about the future. And then it gets interesting. The next verse he says, for the pagans. For the pagans. You know what the pagans are? The pagans are people that don't believe in God. They don't believe that he knows who they are. They don't even believe he answers prayer. He said, for the pagans, and then he goes on. He says, run after all of these things. That phrase, run after, it literally means it's the equivalent to worry after or seek after, or they devote themselves to all these things. He's saying if you're so stressed out over these important things, if you're distracted and you can't focus because you're so focused on these things, he said, then you're acting like people who don't even believe in God, and you're practically living your life as an atheist. To some extent, we can all probably huddle around people who share the same worries, and they share the same concerns and issues that we face. You go to work tomorrow, you go to school tomorrow. It wouldn't take you long if you started asking around, and you'd find people that are worried about the same things that you worry about. That you're working next to or rubbing shoulders with people that are worried about their job. They're worried about their finances. They're worried about their kids. They're worried about their marriage. They're worried about their retirement. They're worried about their health. They're worried about so many different things that we worry about. Jesus is saying when you bump into these people and you share your stories and you rub shoulders with them in the marketplace, the people that have the same worries as you have, your response should be so remarkably different that these people are amazed. And when people look at you and they say, well, you're going through this too, how do you handle this? How do you sleep at night? Then we have an opportunity to shine. We have an opportunity to, as we learned a few weeks ago, to be the salt and to be the light. We're at a place as a nation and a society and a culture where there's a lot more to worry about than we've ever had to worry about before. Which means for those of us who face the same circumstances but refuse to be bound by worry, that our light's going to shine a little brighter in these days that we're living in. You see, your struggles and your temptations and your circumstances, they're common to all men. Somebody else is worrying about the same thing you're worrying about right now. The difference is not the challenge or the trials or the worries. The difference is our response to it. And then I love this next verse. He says, if the pagans run after all these, they're worried about all of these things, and he said, but your heavenly Father knows what you need. Your heavenly Father knows what you need. What separates the pagan from the non-pagan is, do you really believe your heavenly Father knows you and that he knows what you need? Wouldn't it make a huge difference if we just lived our lives as if we really believed that our Heavenly Father knew who we were and that he knew what we needed? Wouldn't it make a huge difference in the way that we live if we just knew that for certain? Imagine tonight you go home and you lay down on your bed and suddenly those worries start swirling around and you start thinking about finances and jobs and kids and marriage, and all of these things start swirling around inside of your head. Imagine what would happen if suddenly, as you're laying in your bed and your mind is running, if suddenly, in a non-freaky way, an angel appeared in your room. And here's this angel standing by your bed. And you know it's an angel of God, and all the angel does is look you in the eye and say, God knows. He knows. And then he was gone. I just have to think that would bring some extraordinary comfort into our lives, just knowing that, oh, God's aware, God knows, he knows me, and he knows what I need. Jesus is saying, he knows you need these things. He knows they're important. And because he knows, you don't have to worry. We were really confident that God knew what we needed. What do you think would happen to our stress level? We were certain that God knew exactly what we needed. He knew who we were. He knew everything. If we just knew that he knew, what do you think that would do to the stress level in our life? So now Jesus has addressed the whole issue of stress, and now he's saying, okay, we've talked about it now. I want to get on the solution side of stress. How do you handle stress? And he begins, but seek first. Seek first. In other words, what you've been seeking first is the wrong thing. What you've been devoted to is leading you into a valley of worry. What you have been devoted to and seeking after, that's why you're at the place emotionally that you're at right now. He said, but seek first. You've been devoted to the wrong thing. So the solution to worry, if we could give it to you in a simple statement, would be to transfer your devotion. Change what you've been seeking first. Transfer your devotion. And then he goes on, he said, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. His kingdom and his righteousness. Seek first. Opposed to your job or your schooling or your house or your children or your marriage or whether you're single or loneliness or money or retirement or whatever it is, all those things are important. In fact, your Father knows that you need all these things. But he says, as long as you're devoted and your primary devotion is to your financial security or a happy marriage or your kids or getting a job or selling the house or getting into the right school or dating that person or marrying this person, as long as these are your primary devotion, you're just going to worry. Jesus wants to invite us into a whole different way of living and thinking. And His invitation is for us to surrender our entire lives to Him. Not just a segment of our lives and not just the area that we're worried about. So many times people are like, we get our lives in a mess and this area's in a mess and this area's in a mess. And we quickly take that mess and we go, oh, here, God, you can have it all. I just surrender everything to you. And He begins to put it back together again. And then we go, oh, thank you. And we're back and we're running things again. So it's not just surrendering the areas that we worry about, but surrendering our entire lives. He wants us to seek His agenda for the world and our agenda second. We hear this phrase a lot, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. What does that mean? Jesus explained it when He taught us how to pray, and He said, pray this way. He said, pray, and how many of you know the prayer? Thy kingdom come, Thy will be done on earth or in us. So what He's saying is simply means pray like this. God, you know how bad we need to sell our house. God, you know how bad I need a husband or I need a wife. God, you know how bad I want to get into this school. You know how bad I want to pass this exam. You know how we need direction right now. You know how we need an answer right now. But I've decided to seek your kingdom first and mine second. I'm making a transfer of my devotion. Instead of being committed to my kingdom and trying to get you to answer my prayers, I'm going to take Jesus up on His challenge, and I'm going to surrender all of my life, and say, God, your kingdom take priority in my life, and your will be done in my life. And at the end of every day and at the end of every prayer, when we lay down to rest and those worries start swirling around again and we're tempted to delve back into our worries and try to control things that we can't control, that I'm simply going to say, God, to the best of my ability, I've done all I know to do, and I'm trusting you with all the rest. When we transfer our devotion, something happens to your worry. Once they've surrendered their entire lives to Christ, I've heard people, and some in this room, make very similar statements. They'll say, once I gave everything to God, there was just this peace. And the Bible talks about it as a peace beyond understanding. And what that means is it's just a peace that can't be explained. Nothing changes on the outside, but something happens on the inside of us. So Jesus says, hey, stop worrying. Exchange your devotion by becoming devoted to something entirely different than you and your kingdom. Jesus says to His audience, and I think He says to us today, I'm inviting you to make a decision to open your hands and to say, I'm surrendering everything. Everything. I'm surrendering my marriage. I'm surrendering my kids. I'm surrendering our finances. I'm surrendering my 401k. I'm surrendering my business, my relationships. I'm surrendering everything I have. I'm surrendering to you, and I'm trusting you, God, for tomorrow, praying that you'll be glorified and that your kingdom will be established in me and your will be done in my life. Now, I know you probably are sitting here going, well, that scares me to death. To say, God, here's everything, every part of me, everything I hold dear. God, here's everything. That scares me to death. I mean, what if He takes it? Well, it doesn't end there. And this is where the surprise ending comes in. Because he says if you'll surrender and devote everything to him, he says, and all these things, what things? The things you're worried about, things you're concerned about, the things over which you have no control, the things over which you don't know how they're going to turn out. He says, and all these things will be given to you as well. How do you know that? Because he said, you're more important to me than the birds of the air and the flowers of the field. And I've invited you to call me your heavenly Father. Of course, I'm going to take care of you. And then he wraps it all up in verse 34. He says, therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. In other words, when your mind begins to attach itself to the concerns of today and worries about tomorrow, and they start creeping in on you, just say, stop, no, not going to happen. Thy will be done in my life. I've done all I can do today. I've done all I know to do. I'm fully trusting you with tomorrow. And all these things, he said, will be taken care of. We just went through a very difficult transition in our home. And something happened in our home, and within a couple of weeks, our lives were turned topsy-turvy, and my daughters. And how many know that you worry about your kids? Don't we? Yeah, that's one of our biggest worries. And things were kind of turned upside down in our life, and we were just kind of blindsided and worried and began to try to figure something out, and it was beyond our control. And in the midst of all the pain and frustration, we sat down, and I did what every good pastor would do, and I sat down and I began to talk to my daughter. I was like, we're trusting God. God is faithful, and God is true to His Word, and He's ordering our steps. And I did all the pastoral stuff that I knew to tell her, and I was just, all of this. And then when I walked away, I was going, God, what? And I was worrying, and what's going to happen? What's tomorrow hold, and all that. But I remember telling her something that someone told me a long time ago that helped me, and they said, Chris, God never demotes, He always promotes. If you're following Him and you're serving Him and you're called according to His purpose, then God has a plan for you. It's a good plan. And I shared that with her, and I remember telling her, I said, who knows? Something may happen tomorrow. Something may happen in the next day or two. A phone may ring or something may happen, and we're just going to trust God, and we're going to take it one day at a time. And within a short few days, something happened. And I was like, oh, wow, wasn't expecting that. Man of faith I am. Wow, God, you did something. Oh, wow, I wasn't expecting this. And God did something. And He reminded me again through all of this, as He said, don't worry about tomorrow. Because tomorrow will I'm the one who controls tomorrow. You live for today. Do all you know to do today, and trust me with tomorrow. And that's where some of you are this morning. You're worried about tomorrow. You're worried about next week. You're worried about next month. You're worried about how this situation is going to turn out or what's going to happen. And you're worrying yourself to death because you're trying to control something that you have no control over. And God is simply asking you, He's saying, hey, don't obsess over tomorrow because I'll be in tomorrow. I'm already there. I'll take care of tomorrow. You trust me and be responsible for today. I think the takeaway from all of this that I'd like to leave you with is this. Would you be willing this week at some point to get a alone and a little time, quiet time? And would you be willing to list all the things that are important to you? Would you make a list, not just the things that you worry about, but everything in your life? Would you be willing to make a list and write it down? And after you write this list down, would you be willing to do this? Go through that list and say, is my job more than life? Is having money more than life? Is my health more than life? Is this situation between me and this other person, is that more than life? Or another way you could ask the same question is, am I fully devoted to this area or to God? And then pray this prayer, God, I'm redirecting my primary devotions away from all of this. Even though it's important, even though I still care, even though I'm going to work diligently and do everything I know to do, that God, even though these things are important, I want to learn what it means to seek your kingdom first and to have your will done in my life. So I'm letting go of these things. I'm surrendering my life and what represents life to you. And as we do that daily, watch what happens to our worry level in our lives. Someone told me a long time, I think it may have been my father, made the statement one time to me. I was worried about some stuff, and you just have to know him. He had a way with saying flippant stuff, like everything will be all right in the morning. Well, I'm like, what morning? Tell me. Come on, give me a little more detail. But one of his statements that he made to me was about worry. He was like, don't worry about that. Don't stay up tonight worrying about it, because God's going to be up all night anyway. Let him worry about it. Let him take care of it. Trusting God. Do what we can do today. Trust God with tomorrow. The band's going to come up and get ready to lead us in a couple of songs. And one of the things I want to ask you to do, and we did this last week, if you weren't here last week, it's a great opportunity for you, or maybe you were here and you want to add to it, but we had a couple of boards on either side of the stage. And we invited people last week to come up and write your greatest worries on these boards. Now, writing your worry on the board is not going to instantly change something. But what it was symbolic of, and what it's symbolic of today, and I challenge you today to do, is as we stand and sing in a moment, somewhere during those songs, if there's something that is really worrying, if there's an area of your life you're struggling, going, but I can't release it to God because I need to fix it, or I need to do something, and you're struggling with this worry in your life, then I want to challenge you as we sing these songs, maybe to get up during the song, there's some markers up here, and just come up and write that word or that phrase on the board, and let that just kind of be symbolic of you saying, God, I'm coming up, I'm surrendering my fears, my worries, and I'm trusting you. Very simple. Just to say, God, here it is. Here's the situation at work that I'm so worried over. God, I'm surrendering that to you, and I'm walking back to my seat, and I'm trusting you. And I want to challenge you to do that as they lead us in these songs. I want to invite you to stand. I want to pray for us, and then I'll invite you to come as we sing.